Welcome to Short Story Theater. Today's program is a good old-fashioned ghost story. Normally our plays are written by our producer, Bill Russo. But today we're digging up a dusty old tale from the vault. It's called The Judge's House. It's a spine-tingler, and it was written by none other than Bram Stoker, whose main job was as a theater manager. But his claim to fame came just before the year 1900, when he wrote the Gothic horror novel, Dracula.
This play is about another undead creature, who is far less famous than the bloodthirsty Count Dracula, but who in his own right is a pretty nasty guy.
Let's get on our private jet right now and travel from the theater of the mind, just off Main Street in your town, to a quiet little village a few miles from the city of London. That was a quick flight, and a good landing. From the airport, we hired a hackney carriage, and we were driven to an isolated glen, a mile from the small village of Orkinshire. At the top of a bleak hill, we see a rundown old mansion. It has been vacant for many years. The property is surrounded on all sides by a stone wall that is 12 feet high. The rambling old estate building has windows, but they are very small, and are located very high in relation to the floors. It's late in the day, and there is a chilly wind drifting up from the marsh. Look carefully in the fading light of day, and you will see two people standing in the walkway leading up to the front steps of the main house. One of the two is a real estate agent who is attempting to get a tenant for the rundown mansion. The other man is a newly retired business executive from a town near Bangor, Maine. He's a member of one of the old New England families that can trace their roots back to the Mayflower. He's come to England to research the origins of his ancestors, and to write a family history. The real estate agent is Grayson J. Greeley, and his prospective customer is Asa Bittridge. Let's get a little closer and listen in on the conversation.
There she is, sir, a fine example of an old English mansion. You've had a look at the insides, and at the outsides. What do you think, Mr. Bittridge?
Well, it certainly is isolated, and that's what I want. Peace and quiet so I can do my research and work on my book. I like those walls. They must be 12 feet high.
You're in England now, sir, so they're only 3.5 meters high. But I will admit that when you Americans say 12 feet high, it does sound more impressive than 3.5 meters.
Now that I'm here in Great Britain, feet and inches are meters and centimeters. I guess pounds now will be my new dollars. Speaking of pounds, how many of them will it take to rent this place for 6 months? That should give me plenty of time to complete my work.
Mr. Bittridge, if it were up to me, and not the owner of the place, I'd let you have it rent-free. It's been empty for so long that the local people have some sort of an absurd prejudice about it.
Absurd prejudice, you say, Mr. Greeley? What do you mean by that?
Oh, it's nothing, Mr. Bittridge. It's very silly. But there is some prejudice about the house. It comes from being empty for a long time. That type of situation gives some people the idea for rumors and gossip. They make up stories about the reasons for it not being occupied. Just local silliness. Still, because of all the talk, the rent is quite low. It will be only £200 a month. That's about $270 in American money. The owner requires a month's rent in advance.
I'll take it, Aya. I have the cash with me right now, if you don't mind taking it in American dollars. I'm gonna pay 3 months in advance today. Oh, by the way, you mentioned to me when I inquired earlier that you know of a lady who would look after me while I'm living there.
Mr. Greeley directed Asa Bittridge to a tea shop, run by a motherly lady, named Mrs. Witham. Though she did not think it was a good idea for anyone to live in the old rundown mansion, she reluctantly agreed to recommend someone who would be willing to do the cooking and cleaning for the visitor from northern Maine in the United States.
Let's listen into the conversation at Mrs. Witham's tea shop.
Hello, Mrs. Witham. You have a lovely tea shop here, and I do appreciate that you also have coffee. I'll have a coffee and a crumpet, or a jelly donut if you got one. Oh, excuse me, let me introduce myself. I'm Asa Bittridge. Mr. Greeley, the real estate man, said you can help me to find someone to keep house for me. You see, I'm renting that big old mansion. You know, the one with the 12-foot high walls. I mean, three and a half meter walls all around it.
I've never known anyone stay in the judge's house, sir.
The judge's house? That's the name of the place? That's what it's called?
By the locals, yes, sir. I don't know how long it's been called that. I'm not from these parts myself, but everyone I've known since coming to Benchurch has referred to it as such. It was the abode of a judge, 100 years or more ago, and he was held in great terror on account of his harsh sentences and his hostility to prisoners at the assizes. As to what there is against the house itself, I cannot tell, sir. I've often asked, but no one will inform me. There was a general feeling that there was something. Oh, I'm sorry, sir, for my disturbing talk, but if you were my boy, and you'll excuse me for saying it, you wouldn't sleep there a night. Not if I had to go there myself and pull the alarm bell that hangs from the roof.
Mrs. Witham, I appreciate your motherly concern, I really do. But I'd have to be about 40 years younger than I am to be your boy. But still, I really do appreciate your advice. Now, what is this about an alarm bell?
The rope hangs right down into the drawing room, right next to the judge's chair itself.
Despite her concerns, Mrs. Witham agreed to find a suitable housekeeper for Mr. Bittridge. She said that she would order all the necessary provisions for him, and arrange for a lady named Mrs. Dempster to see to the cooking and house cleaning. The next day, Asa Bittridge was sitting in the drawing room of a dusty old house, when Mrs. Dempster reported for work. She helped him arrange the several dozen books that he had brought for his research. They stacked the thick volumes on shelves in the drawing room. Mr. Bittridge asked Mrs. Dempster if she knew anything about the strange properties of the house. Mrs. Witham had told him there were bogies in the mansion. He asked Mrs. Dempster if she knew anything about the bogies. She quickly answered him.
I'll tell you what, sir. Bogies is all kinds and sorts of things, except bogies. Rats, mice, beetles, creaky doors and loose slates, broken panes and stiff drawer handles that stay out when you pull 'em and then fall down in the middle of the night. There, you bogies. Look at that wainscot, hundreds of years old. Do you think, sir, you won't see none of 'em? Rats is bogies, and bogies is rats, and don't you get to thinking anything else.
Mrs. Dempster said no more, and went about her work. She was an admirable housekeeper, and quickly made the old place as habitable as possible. Before leaving for the night, she prepared an English-style dinner for Mr. Bittridge, though he wasn't sure what mutton would taste like. He ate the meal she made, and judged it to be quite good. He poured a large glass of wine, and settled down with his books. There being no electricity in the home, he had to use 2 oil lamps to obtain enough light to read. Asa Bittridge began his research with a volume about the first settlers in Plymouth, in the New World, in the year 1620. Samuel L. Bittridge was listed as one of the first residents of the New World colony. His occupation was listed as clerk. Sometime around 11 p.m., Asa Bittridge began to feel sleepy.
It's getting late. My eyes are starting to get heavy. I guess I ought to think about going to bed. I'll just finish off my glass of wine and then I'm gonna turn in. Peace and quiet. Solitude. Yeah, you can actually hear the silence. That noise. What's that?
Bogies is rats, and rats is bogies.
It's the rats. The rats from the bell tower on the roof. The rats racing around like they've been doing for generations, boring, scratching, running up and down that thick rope that leads to the great alarm bell on the roof. They've stopped their mischief for tonight. It's chilly. I'm going to throw a few more logs into the fireplace. Then I'll turn up the oil lamp and read a few more pages. Then off to bed. Oh my God. Oh my God, go away, damn you! Go away, rat! He doesn't move. It's just staring at me. I'm gonna throw my wine glass at it. He still doesn't move. It's baring its teeth at me. I know. The poker from the fireplace, the poker. I'll kill it with a poker. Now, you evil-looking monster, you're all done. I'll kill you. Take that! It didn't even put a dent in the rat. He scampered up the bell rope. Oh my God, it started again. Leave me, you filthy rats, leave me.
Sir? Sir?
Oh, Mrs. Dempster. The morning light's coming through the window. I'm still in the drawing room with my books. I must have fallen asleep right here. Mrs. Dempster, what time is it?
It's just gone 9, sir. I let you sleep when I arrived. It looked as if you'd been up most of the night.
Well, Mrs. Dempster, the truth is, I don't remember falling asleep. I was reading 1 minute, then the next thing I remember is you knocking on the door. I guess you've been here a while because it looks like you already made me breakfast. Thank you very much. And you made me a cup of coffee, too.
Everything all right?
Yeah, but what do you mean, all right?
Last night. No bogies.
Nope, no bogies, Mrs. Dempster. No bogies, none at all. You know, after I finish this wonderful breakfast you made, I think I'm gonna go take a walk.
Asa Bittridge, the wealthy retired business executive from northern Maine, left the drafty old mansion, with its 12-foot-high walls, situated in a small village some miles north of London, and walked along the narrow lane leading from the judge's house to the village. After he had walked about a mile on the mostly deserted road, he saw a motor car driving towards him. The car pulled over to the side of the road. It was Mrs. Witham. She was coming to the judge's house to visit him. She asked him if everything was all right, and he told her that he was doing just fine.
I can't tell you how relieved I was when Mrs. Dempster told me you were well and sleeping sound when she went in first thing this morning.
You've already been up to the house, then?
I've just come from there. I hope Mrs. Dempster's proving satisfactory.
Oh, more than satisfactory. Thank you, Mrs. Witham. And you'll be pleased to know that the somethings didn't worry me in the least bit.
Start your marijuana education journey today with Mary on Demand. Discover lessons, articles, and resources for learning about the lawful and unlawful use of medical marijuana in Florida. Make the most of your educational experience by subscribing. Subscribers receive knowledge checks to confirm understanding, badges and certification opportunities to showcase expertise, and notifications about upcoming events or newly released content. Engage with the Mary team. Visit mary.famu.edu, create a free account, and unlock your ultimate learning experience today.
I saw the rats, though. I saw the rats, and they put on a circus performance for me, climbing up and down that rope that leads to the alarm bell in the tower, and I can tell you, Mrs. Witham, they were all over the place, they were. There was one particularly wicked-looking old devil that sat up on the big armchair by the fireplace, and he wouldn't go away till I thumped him with the fireplace poker. And then he ran up the alarm bell rope and hid somewhere up in the wall or the ceiling. I couldn't see him. So dark, you know.
An old devil and sitting on a chair by the fireside. Oh, take care, sir. You take care.
It's nothing to worry about, really, Mrs. Witham. The old devil was just a rat.
An old devil. The devil.
Oh, Mrs. Witham, don't worry. That old devil was a foul, smelly creature. But it's just a rat.
Let's hope so.
Asa Bittridge finished his walk and arrived back at the judge's house in time for a fine lunch, prepared by Mrs. Dempster. She wanted to make him an American-style meal, so she served him a platter of French fries, which she of course called chips, and a hamburger. The burger was inside of a freshly baked roll, and was fine. Except for one small detail. Instead of ground beef for hamburger, Mrs. Dempster had put a thick slice of cold ham inside the roll. Mr. Bittridge chuckled to himself and thanked her for a very fine ham-burger. After lunch he dove into his work. He made dozens of pages of notes, after reading hundreds of pages of history about his family members. Before he knew it, it was supper time. Mrs. Dempster outdid herself at dinner. She served a wonderful English meal. Pies. Not apple pie or blueberry pie, as he might have hoped, but ham pies, and veal pies. He ate his dinner and got right back to work.
Time passed quickly. Before he knew it, the midnight hour struck.
Well, clock is striking 12. The midnight hour. The witching hour. Or is it the hour of the rat? Well, if that devil shows up tonight, I'm ready for him, I put the end of the rope line on the table underneath the oil lamp, and I've got me a dozen heavy books like weapons ready to throw at him. I'm ready for you, you old devil. Well, he ain't here yet. I reckon I'll just pour myself a cup of coffee. I want to stay awake for that dirty rat. That's the ticket. It's good coffee. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's real quiet. Nothing stirring. What's that? The rope moved. I ain't gonna move except for my eyes. Yes, he's coming down the rope. The size of that devil. Enormous! The nerve of the monster. He's dropping down the rope. And again he sits on the old chair just staring at me. He's on that chair just looking at me. I'll take care of you this time. You need a lesson. You need a lesson, so I'm just going to throw a heavy book at you. Take that! Well, I missed him. And he's laughing at me. Hey, well, for sure, I won't miss this time. I'll finish the monster. I hate him. I hate him. I got a book now that weighs 4 pounds. I ain't sure how much that is in English weight. Maybe 4 pounds is a half a stone, I guess. At any rate, it's going to be enough to squash that devil rat. Take this! The book hit the monster, but it didn't knock the thing out. He's got away. Ran up the rope, he did. Went up through the ceiling. Okay. Where does he go to up there? He seemed to go through that great picture. The picture's so dirty I can't see what it's a picture of. I'm going to look at that more closely in the morning. The picture from the fireplace. I won't forget it. I better pick up my books. Let's see now. The book that hit the monster. That 4-pound book. I guess I should say that book that weighs half a stone. It was the Bible. The Bible my mother gave to me. I think I'll ask Mrs. Dempster to clean that picture up there by the fireplace first thing in the morning.
Woke up this morning, feeling lonely on my bed, and I'm so alone here, feeling over sad. Was a half man, half an hour. Wasn't half man in my bed. Wasn't half man, half an hour. And I always feeling sad.
The next morning just after breakfast, Mrs. Witham arrived at the judge's house for a visit. She was accompanied by Dr. Thornhill, the only physician within 50 miles. Mrs. Dempster served tea to the visitors and coffee to Asa Bittredge. Dr. Thornhill quickly explained the reason for the visit. Mrs. Witham was worried about Asa's health and she asked the doctor to discreetly have a look at the American visitor. After a few minutes' conversation, the doctor told Mrs. Witham that Mr. Bittredge seemed to be in fine shape. But what about the rats? He asked. He asked Asa Bittredge if the rats always climbed down the bell rope. And Asa confirmed that they did. Then the doctor told Asa Bittredge about the original use of the bell rope.
It is the very rope which the hangman used for all the victims of the judge's judicial rancor.
Leaving Asa Bittredge alone with his thoughts, the doctor and Mrs. Witham drove back to the village.
The doctor agreed with Mrs. Witham that Asa Bittredge might be under too much stress from his encounters with the rats. They both feared that his imagination might run away with him. The doctor came up with a plan to help the visitor from America. He explained his thoughts to Mrs. Witham.
In the night, he may get some strange fright or hallucination. And if he does, I want him to pull that rope. All alone as he is, it will give us warning and we may reach him in time to be of service. I shall be sitting up pretty late tonight and shall keep my ears open.
What do you mean, Doctor?
I mean this, dear lady, that possibly, nay, more, probably, we shall hear the great alarm bell from the judge's house tonight.
Back at the judge's house, the day passed peacefully for Asa Bittredge. He wrote dozens of pages of his family history and read many chapters from several of his dusty old books. After a delicious meal prepared by Mrs. Dempster, Asa Bittredge went back to the table next to the bell rope. His fireplace was blazing, and he had 3 oil lamps burning.
Well, this night's going good. Getting a lot of work done, and no interruptions from the rats. I spoke too soon. There's the old devil. I'm going to take a look at his hiding place up near that picture by the fireplace. I wonder if Mrs. Dempster cleaned it like I asked her to. I'm going to have to get up on a chair to see it more clearly. There. I'm up on the chair. I can see the picture. Oh, God. It's a picture of the judge in his courtroom. A portrait of his face. Makes the flesh creep. So merciless, evil, vindictive. He looks like a bird of prey, and those eyes, why, they are just like the rat. They pierce right through me. Dear God, I wish I hadn't asked Mrs. Dempster to clean it. Better that face was covered with the grime of 100 years than to be seen by people. Oh, damn, the chair gave way under me. I have fallen to the floor. I'm on the floor and I can't see a thing now. Damn, where's that rat? There you are. On the bell rope. Oh, I gotta find another lamp. I'm shaking. Actually shaking. This won't do. Settle down, Asa. Settle down, Asa. My nerves are acting up. Are you there again? Yes, you are, Rat. I see ya. What are you doing? My God, you've gnawed through the rope. Stop it. I'll get you. Where are my books? Take that. What's happening? The picture is gone. The judge has gone from the picture. Where is he?
I am here.
No, you ain't. You're not here. You're not real.
Look at me.
No, I ain't gonna look at you. You're not real. Now the rat's back again. The rat again. What are you doing with that rope? No.
Oh my God.
Keep away from me. Get away.
Please tell me, Doctor. I want to know.
I dare not, madam. It was too horrible.
I must know, sir. Please.
He hanged himself.
Hanged himself?
From the bell rope. He had stood on the judge's chair, put the noose around his neck, and then apparently kicked the chair away.
Oh, my God.
Who would have thought it? It was the weight of his own body that gave the alarm as he swung.
All right, Doctor, no more, I pray you.
And there was something else.
What was that?
Probably my imagination, of course. But the judge's picture, the huge portrait high up on the wall. I'd never noticed it, but do you remember a smile on the judge's face? I don't.
And so closes The Judge's House. The play was adapted from a short work by Bram Stoker. Asa Bittridge was played by our producer and director, Bill Russo. Matt Larbuck was the narrator. Nancy Nevinson was Mrs. Dempster and Jane Thompson was Mrs. Witham. Their roles were originally produced for an adaptation of the story presented by the BBC. Our producer, Bill Russo, wrote this adaptation of the original tale. The featured theme music included the song Half Men by Lobo Loco, available at no charge in the Free Music Archive. Other music was by Bernard Herrmann, who was the music director for the CBS radio network in the 1940s and 50s. This is Basil Nightingale speaking for Bill Russo and the players of Short Story Theatre. Thanks for listening and come back again real soon. Won't you?